A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, delegates and friends. Can I invite everyone to take your seat on the... We are starting our forum very soon, and please kindly get seated. Well, I hope our office is not that difficult to find, and I'm very glad to see so many familiar faces and new friends here. A very good morning, everyone. Welcome to our forum on transforming business and developing talents to embrace the future of manufacturing. This event is jointly brought to you by the SkillsFuture Singapore, the Advanced Manufacturing Training Academy, and the JTC Corporation. My name is Huey from AMTA, and I will be your host this morning. Like I mentioned, I'm really excited to see so many new friends and familiar faces in our physical event format. And there are also about 150 guests joining us on our virtual event platform. Our audiences come from different enterprises, institutes of higher learnings, the wider public, and SG itself. A big welcome to all. Before I begin, allow me to go through a few administration details. This forum consists of 3 sharing sessions from SSG, AMTA, and JobKred respectively. There will also be a panel discussion come Q&A session at the end where your questions will be addressed. You can pose your questions using the QR code showing on the screen later on. During the forum, please keep your mobile in silent mode, and this forum is going to be recorded and published on my SkillsFuture portal, SSG and AMTA's LinkedIn page, and SSG's YouTube channels. Finally, all the slides shared will be sent to you by email in about a week after the session. This is our first event we are holding at this office. This is also the first time SSG is partnering with AMTA and JTC to organize the Job Skills Insight webinar. This is the first time in our GID office, so before I start, let me share a short video of the exciting opportunities and the ecosystem we have put together in JID.
Manufacturing is entering a new age, an age of endless opportunities for the knowledge industry. Singapore is taking the next big step in developing its advanced manufacturing ecosystem.
Jurong Innovation District will be Asia's leading one-stop advanced manufacturing hub. Wholly master planned, developed and managed by JTC. This district supports our Manufacturing 2030 plan, representing the next lap of manufacturing in Singapore. When fully completed, JID will nurture an ecosystem of technology providers, high-tech manufacturers, researchers, and educational and training institutions. This is where technology, talent, and sustainable design converge to inspire ideas and accelerate solutions.
We've created a living lab environment designed to open up new opportunities. Whether you're looking for a testbed for experimentation or partners to develop 5G and artificial intelligence technologies with, JID has it all.
Hyundai Motor Group Innovation Center in Singapore will be an open innovation lab focused on future mobility research with the aim of revolutionizing the mobility value chain. Jurong Innovation District has the right mix of advanced manufacturers, academic institutions, technology providers, and the services, making it an ideal location to create new ideas and test bed innovative solutions.
We believe and share the same vision of JID to nurture the seeds of tomorrow's innovation. With leading companies and talents in the fields of advanced manufacturing joining JID, such proximity brings opportunities for interaction that will drive innovation and idea sharing. By locating Makino's Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence in JID, we hope to foster partnerships with more industry partners and institutions.
Key of the Advanced Manufacturing Transformation Center is to accelerate the adoption of the existing and upcoming factories for additive manufacturing. We set up there a complete ecosystem that is accessible to all companies embarking on their digital transformation journey. A collaborating platform for co-creation with existing and new customers.
At its core are people, those who determine your success in your advanced manufacturing journey. Our universities work closely with manufacturers to ensure that thousands of young creative minds are plugged into this ecosystem.
A campus is where one finds deep investigation of ideas. There's not merely a physical space, but rather a community developing and growing together.
The future is about collaboration, I think more than anything. It's this collaborative environment that by being in the Jurong Innovation District ourselves, engaging with the customers, that also plays back into our organization, being able to tell our organization what is the need.
JID is growing an advanced manufacturing ecosystem and bringing it right to your doorstep. All you have to do is plug and play. The possibilities, they're endless.
I hope you enjoyed the video. The Industry Connect office we are gathering here today is a new addition to JID under the Industry Transformation Initiative between AMTA and JTC. Here, we are going to share more of I 4.0 with the companies and help companies to start, scale, and sustain their I 4.0 transformation. On top of these resources, SSG and AMTA have been partnering over the last few months to develop job skills insight on Industry 4.0. With our National Manufacturing 2030 roadmap to grow the sector by 50%. The adoption of I 4.0 and the ability to leverage innovation and skills are the key factors of success. Industry 4.0 transformation of the manufacturing sector has created new job opportunities and transformed the content of existing roles. This means enterprises and workforce must equip with new skill sets to stay ahead. So what are the national skills trends in I 4.0 transformation? What are the support the companies can type on to adopt I 4.0? And what are the steps companies can take to harness the full potential of I 4.0? Let's find out these insights from today's expert speakers. Without further ado, let me introduce Ms. Chelvin Loh, our first speaker for today. As Director of the Job Skills Insight Division, Chelvin leads a team of job skills analysts to work together with government agencies, industry partners, training providers, and innovation-led firms. Together, they developed timely and fit-for-purpose job skills insight to signal priorities for workforce and skills transformation. In today's talk, Chelvin will share with us industry trends, insights on job for I 4.0, and skills for manufacturing-related sectors. Welcome, Chelvin.
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me? It's really excited to be here this morning. And when I saw the video earlier, it really, really resonated with me because I think we were part of the whole plan when we fleshed out the JID and the plans, investments, as well as the training organization. So it's really very heartening to see it coming to fruition. We've been working so long with Dr. Zeng and his team. It's really quite exciting to see what we can do more in this space of future of jobs and skills and talent for advanced manufacturing. My name is Chelvin. I'm from SkillsFuture Singapore. Many of you will know SkillsFuture Singapore as this agency under Ministry of Education that does SkillsFuture Credit, your funding for causes. In fact, there's a new team that we set up in SkillsFuture Singapore. We start to look at jobs and skills insights by mining jobs and skills data. So we look at job posting data. We see what are the skills that are trending up in job posting data. We look at jobs and skills profile of companies, not just in Singapore but globally. We look at jobs and skills profiles of countries, cities as well, who are leading in the spaces of more frontier areas, so that we can start to see how we can glean some of these insights and be able to share them, synthesize them, share them with our companies, with our workforce. Most important is to also share them with our training providers, so that we can start to make changes within the curriculum, whether it's our pre-employment or continuing education employment. And then as a result, we can then bring the industry, the training providers, our RHLs, and our SMEs together and co-create some of these solutions for advanced manufacturing. So today I want to share a little bit of some of these that we have come up with. Sorry. Yeah, so a little bit of an introduction I gave earlier about myself. I have a team of 15 job skills analysts in SSG. We sort of rewrote ourselves to do this. Today we look at a lot of the data, and we cover a few sectors, actually all the sectors across our economy. I'll share a little bit about the few important critical areas later. What's important is what we are seeing is there's a lot of economic trends, not just in Singapore but globally. In Singapore, of course, we talked about manufacturing 2030. We see trade 2030. We see the green plan, for example. And there's a lot of talk that's going into how can we make our manufacturing sector a lot more automated, where we can automate, let's automate it so that we don't make work so menial for our workforce. How do we make better use of digital technologies to do better predictive maintenance, right? How do we then re-engineer the job roles of our workforce so that we can move upstream as well? How do we value capture some of these opportunities upstream, right? So that we can then get, in a sense, better profit margins as well, right? And then we see also in the green plan, how do we encourage our companies to move towards sustainable manufacturing? And this in the green area, we see this trend fast and furious. How do we look into circular economy for our manufacturing companies as well? How do we look into better management of the energy and resource requirements, carbon footprint that the various operations are sort of creating as a result of the whole operations end to end, right? And we see a minister talks about how we want to combine digital transformation, sustainability, and how do we better manage these post-pandemic opportunities as we look at the shifts in industry as well as economy. What does this all mean, right? And in SSG, we don't just look at the economic trends, the macro trends. We also look at the future of work and future of workplaces and future of learning itself, right? And you see that in the area of in the era of AI augmented workforce, many of the roles will change. Job roles will change. Why? Because technologies will enhance work functions, and because technology enhances work processes, your job will naturally change, right? We also see a lot of moving trends towards less focus on job roles, but more focus on skills. I think Gary will talk a lot about it later as well, right? And that's interesting. Why? Because we see a lot more organizations thinking, how can I tap the talent pool that is not binded by their job role, but within the rest of the organization and outside the organization? How do I tap better into their skill sets, right? And call for talent is something that we see in organizations today, where you encourage staff across the organization to put out their hands for certain projects, for example. And that's how consulting firms we know today tap on some of these expertise across the organization. And the part about how we build a resilient workforce. Post-pandemic, just now we were talking to Suresh earlier, there's this great resignation as well that we keep hearing, right? In Singapore, we don't see that much happening, the stats, which is good because our job market is so tight. But I think what we are seeing on the meso level, which is the organization at the firm level, is really an increasing emphasis on workplace inclusivity skills, right? For example, how do you look at workplace optimization skills, right? How do you work life harmony skills, for example? And how do companies encourage that. And in turn, helping your workforce to be more resilient, not just at the work performance level, but also as your personal life and how you come to see a sort of a balance between the two, right? And because of this, right, really your work environment is changing. Your work process is changing, right? The industry is changing, and therefore we feel that this pace of change will accelerate, and that will really, really make us rethink about how do we invest in skills, what kind of skills to invest in, where can I tap the skills even if I don't buy the skills, buy from market, how do I borrow the skills from the ecosystem, how do I partner with industry players or ecosystem players where I can borrow the skill sets in. So I think this is something that we will start to see a lot more. And in SSG, we sort of look at our jobs and skills insights in 4 different pillars. We group across sectors. So we look at the Industry 4.0 economy, which is what I'm going to talk a lot about later for the rest of this presentation. We also talked about, we looked at digital economy. And in this space, I think every sector is none of the sectors are spared. It's just different degrees of digitalization, right? Green economy today, we already see green skills happening across more than 17 sectors, and I think it's growing by the day as well, right? Care economy, I mentioned earlier, is about skills today. We see a lot more emphasis on health and wellness skills. We see a lot more teaching and learning skills, and that's happening whether you are in a teaching organization or not. Actually, in fact, we see a lot of that skills across fast-growing sectors like ICT, for example. So in SSG, we start to group our insights into these 4 pillars. The reason is to help our workforce see whether we have transferable skills that help you move across. And to organizations looking at this, in fact, in your workplace, most likely you will need skills across the 4 pillars as you address different parts of your skill sets within your organization. So in the Industry 4.0 space, we also looked into where investments are heading. So this map on the chart, on the slide shows you where the investments are heading. What are the new technologies that VCs are funding in the space of product design and manufacturing, right? And we see a few trends coming up: advanced modeling. We see trends like faster design cycles, a greater use of simulation tools, not just for work, but also for training purposes, right? We see a lot more use of industrial automation and robotics. This is coming from the product development perspective, ecosystem, coming out from the vendor's perspective as well, right? And also how we see greater use of predictive maintenance and analytics, so that within our pool of technicians, for example, engineers, for example, how do we better understand the data so that we can be more targeted in our maintenance, etc. So then we ask ourselves, in view of all these trends, how would the jobs and skills change in this area? And we sort of, we look at the whole end-to-end. This is for product design and development, right? All the end-to-end. And we break it down into product design stage, product prototyping stage, as well as product manufacturing stage. And some of the areas that we see are skills like jobs like design engineer, user experience designer. And some of the skills you see a lot more design-centric skills, right? Like design thinking, user experience design in this pillar coming up. In the area of prototyping, we see a bit more prototyping skills like 3D modeling. We also see things like virtual VR application as well as 3D modeling. In the area of the pillar of product manufacturing, right down to the manufacturing stage, you see things like Internet of Things application, IoT application, right? You see things like predictive maintenance. You see things like technology application, automation application. What was interesting is data analytics and programming keeps coming up when we scan our data on these areas, these 3 pillars, right? Next, we also want to see how are the job demand picking up for some of these critical roles that we mentioned earlier. The reason why we pick up some of these roles is because as we work with the different agencies across the whole manufacturing sector, we keep seeing demand for sector agencies saying they need design engineers, product engineers, as well as automation engineers. So we want to ask ourselves, is the job market really hiring these roles? Because otherwise there's no opportunities, right? No point training so much. So we see that there's a huge demand picking up, hiring demand for design engineers, product engineer, automation engineer. Sectors includes aerospace sector, electronic sector, huge demand. A lot of them are also in our startups as well as our SMEs as well, right? We also see precision engineering companies also hiring to consult these roles. And what do the skills need, right? So we also want to ask ourselves, which are the sectors that have the biggest hiring demand for the roles earlier, right? So we see that, and we use our workforce analytics tools like LinkedIn Talent Insights. We look at the supply of talent in this space, and we saw that actually there are a few sectors that there's very strong hiring demand. Sectors like biotech, chemicals, electronics, industrial automation, logistics and supply chain, as well as maritime and semicon. The numbers here refers to the number of professionals who say they have skills relating to Industry 4.0. These ones are really the hiring demand in these sectors. So we see there are some hot spots coming up, right, in these few sectors. And so what we did was then we looked at these, specifically these 7 sectors. We went into our workforce analytics tools, and we want to see which are the other roles that are fast growing. And therefore, we start to see not just the 3 roles I mentioned earlier. You see technologists, you see business analyst, you also see machine learning engineer. That's coming up in the radar, where a lot more, the number of professionals who are in these roles are growing very fast. Of course, you will still see your design engineers here, product engineers, right? So there is still a need to sort of work on whether upskilling existing staff to take on these roles or bring fresh talent to take on these roles. So, and therefore, we thought that there is always a difference between a skills demand and a skills supply, right? Skills supply as in how many people are coming out from the workforce with those skills, and then from a skills demand perspective, how fast can our organizations absorb people with these skills and therefore create opportunities for them? And where are there some gaps in between the demand and supply? Right? So this is really the supply picture. These are the skills that are growing the fastest among individuals who says they have Industry 4.0 skills. So you see the top of the chart, digital transformation, right? Robotic skills, Power BI skills, which is data analytics skills. And then you go down, you see predictive maintenance, process improvement, IoT management, right? On the demand side, that is the trend of skills that we pull out from job posting data. And we want to see whether do we see the same trends, whether companies are also asking for these skills, right? And you start to see a little bit difference. You see the biggest, maybe I'll just end this. Maybe you see the biggest skills that were required by companies are actually software-related skills, programming skills, right? Project management skills. You see programming, coding, DevOps, for example. You see software engineering here. So a couple of engineering skills here. So there's a slight difference, right? What does this mean, right? So we think that there is a possible a gap in a sense where we might want to see how we can equip our existing staff with some of these skills. Project management, programming skills, AI application, as well as engineering skills. Engineering, depending on which area of work you are in, whether it's software engineering, computer engineering skills, right? Again, does that mean every company needs to do this? No. It depends whether you are in the particular role, your company, which part of the value chain you're in. But across the board, we see some of these skills that are quite lacking. The demand is sort of moving faster than the supply. And what does this mean, right? We then go into the job description because we want to know how a job content changing. And when job content change, you will start to see an increase in the skills demand. So we looked at job content for a role like process engineer. In the past, we have a stack of skills which is not as much. Today we see some of these skills here: data analytics, data synthesis, equipment maintenance, continuous process improvement, and manufacturing process management skills. Some of these skills, we never saw it when a few years ago when we did the skills framework for some of these roles. But today we start to see a lot more of these coming out in the JDs today. This is a new role, sustainability engineer, that we start to see popping up in JDs today, job descriptions and job postings today. And you start to see skills requiring sustainable engineering, design sustainability, manufacturing process in management, as well as sustainability management. This is an engineer role, but you start to see engineer role requiring some of these sustainability related skills adding on to their job scope, because the work functions have changed. The work functions are now looking into identifying sustainable design concepts, providing low energy design advice, for example. So the job content will change, and therefore we see some of these skills emerging. Therefore, I want to hop a little bit more into the green economy, right? Which is interesting because it's creating a lot more opportunities across sectors, but actually a lot of it are underpinned by Industry 4.0. Some of these new roles I mentioned a little bit earlier, a firm like Keppel, for example, is also creating new roles in sustainability. But I want to talk about a little bit about this agri-tech sector, right? Which is also a fledgling startup sector, but you see a lot of Industry 4.0 skills required, new roles that are creating. And this firm that I just wanted to highlight, because we visited their farm, it was really, really interesting, right? Because it's a startup, it's a high-tech prawning farm, right? And they only have a manpower size of about 10 to 12, right? But what's interesting is the end-to-end, it's connected by industry IoT, software enabled. They can then monitor the conditions of the water. They can do predictive water conditions monitoring by putting sensors in the water, etc. How much bacteria to put, for example, right? And what's more interesting is their talent strategy, because it's a startup, right? They look at what we call a buy, build, borrow, bought mentality, right? So you cannot buy all the skills because startup only, right? You can't afford all the software engineers today anyway, right? So they buy talent who has some of the domain skills. So if you're a prawning company, eco company, you jolly well must have the aquaculture skills, right? So they bought the talent from a sea aquarium, etc., with some of these domain skills. And they build their own technology management skills. I think Huey will probably attest to it as well, because a lot of this we had to build ourselves. This is your own tanjia, right? So they build their own system design skills, built from scratch. Many of them are engineers, right? And then because a lot of ICT is being used in whole end-to-end, they don't buy the talent, they borrow from the IHLs through the Centers of Innovation. They borrow the skills from vendors like AWS. They have a huge team of cloud specialists, and they could tap onto the cloud specialists. That's what I meant by borrowing talent, right? And the rest, everything is just automated. And therefore, you can then be able to operate 24/7. You have a lot of predictive maintenance. And the workforce, I think the future of the workforce will be in profiles like this. Upstream, where you can automate, you automate, but you have very strong, that is your core value add of the company, right? And this firm is really the tech management skills, right? And the IP skills. So they are taking this IP and exporting it to other countries like China, for example. At the back, underpinning all these changes, we don't want to underemphasize the need for our soft skills. Because really, we think the soft skills are really our skills to build new skills, right? And in SSG, we launched what we call the critical core skills in 3 different areas. Thinking critically, which are really, really our cognitive skills. Things like problem solving, sense making, decision making, and also transdisciplinary thinking. We also, a very key part is really the interaction with others. How do we interact with others? And how do we create a environment where we emphasize collaboration, right? Influencing skills is key, because like I mentioned earlier, it's not just within your formal line of duty. How do you work with teams across the organization? How do you work with informal teams? How do you influence your peers to come along? How do you influence the suppliers to come along in the sustainability drive, for example, without dollars and cents, right? And then staying relevant. This again is super important on self-management and learning agility. How do you keep learning on the job? Having the mentality, growth mindset to keep learning on the job, and this global perspective, because a lot of these trends are not just impacting Singapore, but it's global. And we then again, we poured into our job posting data to see for those companies hiring Industry 4.0 roles, what are the critical core skills that they constantly ask for. Communication and problem solving, I don't think it will take anybody by surprise. But I thought what was interesting to highlight is skills like self-management, number 3, as well as influence skills. So this, to me, it's interesting because really it's about, as the change happens in the organization and within your job function, how do you manage this change? How do you, you know, in our own learning cycle, right? How do you go back down because you realize you've got new skills to pick up? How do you come back to the balance where you feel that you are contributing effectively? How do you come back to even guiding others? So that cycle about managing your own fears, managing your own change, managing the fear, the risk of failing, for example. So this one is quite interesting, right? We see this in being able to manage risk, for example. And this is about influencing skills, because I think there's a lot more in job posting data today that talks about working in teams. And working in teams, how do you influence your team members? How do you influence the suppliers? How do you influence the customers? So we see this coming up quite a fair bit. Therefore, last but not least, we really want to sort of end it off by saying that actually we see what's happening on the global arena. We see what's happening in Singapore in terms of our different sectoral transformation. We really, really think that for a workforce like ourselves, it's really about how do we think about stacking our skills today. It's not really the skills that you have just operating your job role today, but really what are some of these adjacent skills you need to pick up, and you stack on top of what you already have, and you sort of layer it on, right? And we see some of these priority skills in the 4 economies I mentioned earlier. Also some of these TSCs here that are really about education, development, sustainability, environment, and how we sort of underpinned by CCS. And this can help us to be ready ourselves as an individual workforce, as our company, to pivot into new areas. And therefore, we just want to end off with some simple journey, skills development journey. Really, it's a call to say that we should own our own skills development journey as individuals, as organizations. Let's see how we can partner with government, come up with partners like AMTA, with our sector trade agencies, for example, or trade associations, for example, to see how we can, bring our workforce forward step by step in the skills development journey. And if we do have, skills recognition for companies who wants to recognize the exemplary workforce through our SkillsFuture Employer Awards, as well as we do have resources in our employee enterprise portal for jobs and skills, where we start to put out some of these resources onto our EPJS, and then for companies to access. And we welcome feedback. This is probably the first. We're starting to do this a lot more, putting out the insights on our platforms. EPJS is one. My SkillsFuture portal is another one. For training providers, we'll put the information and insights on our Training Partners Gateway. And we welcome enterprises or individuals to let us know if there are other information you need, so that we can then see how we can customize and provide more targeted signposting and insights. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Happy to take the questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xiaowin, for the really insightful talk. And now please allow me to introduce our second speaker for the day, Dr. Zeng Xianting from the Advanced Manufacturing Training Academy. Dr. Zeng is the program director of AMTA, and he is also the founding director of SIMTEC's Knowledge Transfer Office. Under his guidance, SIMTEC has developed industry-led training programs under a learn, practice, and implement model. These training programs has benefited more than 1,700 companies with more than 7,000 trainees enrolled. Now, in today's talk, Dr. Zeng is going to share with us how AMTA can help the workforce upskilling of companies for Industry 4.0 transformation. Welcome, Dr. Zeng.
Take off. Make my speak easier. Good morning, friends and ladies and gentlemen. This joint forum is about business development and the talent, the business transformation and talent development embrace the future of manufacturing. Thanks for Chelvin's sharing of the megatrend and also the insight of the emerging job skills, job roles, and skills profile at the national level, moving towards the Industry 4.0 and the sustainable manufacturing. And how this trend impact the advanced manufacturing activities and the company's the talent and the skill strategy, such as the 4B approach Chelvin mentioned, the buy, build, and borrow, and bought, which are very, very interesting topics. My sharing will be on AMTA's effort to enable advanced manufacturing transformation through workforce upskilling. So who is AMTA? So AMTA, or Advanced Manufacturing Training Academy, is a national program office launched 1.5 years ago, supported by the 4 government agencies and also NTU to support and accelerate local manufacturing companies' transformation through the workforce upskilling and the talent development. So we are very focused on training. AMTA's 3 primary roles, as you see in the slides, are the foresighting, emerging advanced manufacturing skills and knowledge, charting the advanced manufacturing training offerings in the ecosystem, and the facilitating development of new courses in partnership with the training providers to address the skills gaps and the training needs for companies' I 4.0 transformation. In short, AMTA serves or aims to be a central nexus in advanced manufacturing skills and training, connecting both the demand and the supply side of the workforce training and talent development. So that's what we do. So we started the journey with engagement of manufacturing companies and also the training providers. On the industry side, we engage about 80 over selected companies to understand the Industry 4.0 status and identify the pain points in their transformation. These companies are recommended from EDB, from ESG, and also the alumni, the graduates from the IHCR program, and also a few other, we call them flagship training programs. Through this effort, so we identify the skills gaps and the training needs in common demand to serve the broad base. So our effort under the foresighting and the mapping the emerging Industry 4.0 job skills was conducted in alignment with the SERI framework and the advanced manufacturing job skills insight analysis, as well as the industry validation, in collaboration with SSG's GSI group led by Chelvin. And we will report the outcome of this report in a follow-up event shortly. On the training supply side, we engage the training providers involved in advanced manufacturing training, including local ITRAils, SMTA and ARTC in A-STAR, and other leading industry training providers such as the IHCR programs, the TUSU, and the Bosch Rexroth, and the Omron, etc., to understand their training offerings and mapped and evaluated all the advanced manufacturing training courses in perspective of advanced manufacturing technology and the skills domains and the training topics, and to identify the gap topics for new course development based on our industry engagement. By partnering with the training providers, AMTA has facilitating development and the promotion of contextualized and integrated training programs to address companies' training needs. And also development of new training courses to address the gap topics in the system. So being a central nexus of training demand and the supply funded by government, AMTA does not deliver training course directly. Rather, to company, we help you to select so-called the right or suitable training courses to address your needs. To the training providers, so we have to bring in the training demand intelligence and recommend the training courses for the companies or the new training topics for course development. So that's what we do. So Industry 4.0 transformation covers many technology and the skills domains and the training topics. The transformation must serve a clearly defined business purpose and measurable outcomes, such as productivity gain, capability upgrading, and new business creation through integrated digital competencies or the comparative advantage. Even the critical core skills, as Chelvin mentioned, there are 20 over such skills. So the question is where to start and how to start to achieve such outcomes with the real impact. This would be a challenge for SMEs. You have a serious problem of shortage of manpower. So listed here are some of the major challenges that hold back companies from adopting Industry 4.0. Firstly, have management buy-in of Industry 4.0 with strong business justifications. Companies are facing challenges of hiring experienced staff with foundational skills. For example, in the area of precision engineering, can Industry 4.0 technology help strengthen foundational skills? How to unfold Industry 4.0 full value if the manufacturing is high mix, low volume based in nature? Or you have a short product cycle time. Is it flexible enough, Industry 4.0 line, for easy production adjustment? What is the ROIs and the risk? All these questions need to be answered. Companies need real use cases that they can relate to. And there are solutions available in the market, actually, and that can help iron out some of these concerns. But this would need a process redesign, need innovation, and need adaptable, intelligent tools. They need to have the awareness. Secondly, the lack of leadership capability and the key manpower setting in driving the Industry 4.0 adoption. This is one of the key essential gaps between the SMEs and the leading MNCs through our industry engagement. So to set up the business strategy and the goal for Industry 4.0 adoption. Thirdly, the lack of talents and the Industry 4.0 expertise in identifying and evaluating the critical gaps and the needs in both technology solution and also workforce skills. This is a major challenge, especially for SMEs, as it needs different set of skills from the existing job roles and the skills. Linked with the talent issues is the lack of in-house expertise to develop an actionable plan and internalize the roadmap for action. Many companies, especially SMEs, rely on external consultants to develop a strategic plan and Industry 4.0 roadmap. Adoption and implementation could start only if this roadmap or plan is fully digested and aligned with company's business goal and strategy. Otherwise, this roadmap would be shelved. Selection of right partners and the trainers for implementation is another major challenge. There are a variety of technology solutions available in the market. So which one is suitable for you? There are many, many training courses, actually 400 over training courses, advanced mapping training courses funded under even SSG alone. So which courses suit you? So how to evaluate and select the suppliers with hand-holding and sustainable guidance for your implementation. So lastly, government agencies have committed strong financial resources to support SMEs in both the workforce development and the technology solution through a variety of initiatives and the projects. This is mainly led by SSG, ESG, and the WSG. So SME needs guidance to engage such funding support to accelerate their Industry 4.0 adoption through either pilot studies or even scale-up implementation. Training is the key starting point to address all these challenges. And the training has to be contextualized and practice-based towards companies' business transformation needs. We propose a three-step pathway to guide the company, especially the SMEs, to embark on their advanced manufacturing transformation journey, namely exposure for management, to raise the awareness of Industry 4.0 benefit and obtain the management's buy-in of Industry 4.0 adoption via relevant use cases. This is a starting point to build up the belief and remove the hesitance from the lack of clarity on the ROIs for transformation. Secondly, assessment skills for Industry 4.0 adoption champions. You do need to have the key champions to drive your transformation, to identify the technology and the skills gaps and the plan transformation and the training roadmap. This is the key milestones to enable advanced manufacturing adoption. Lastly, the implementation skills for the staff at all levels to align and develop core Industry 4.0 experience, expertise, and upskill workforce with contextualized training and hand-holding. In other words, Industry 4.0 training for adoption has to come together with guided on-site practice training and the project implementation. AMTA has been experimenting this model by partnering identified enablers and the trainers in the ecosystem across all the 3 steps. Let me explain through 2 case studies. The first case study to share is with a company called Flowline Hydraulics, a progressive SME in the PE sector. Flowline participated in the I3CF program and got inspired to embark on their digital transformation journey. As the first step, Flowline hopes to implement a data-driven capacity planning system to optimize manpower and equipment effectiveness. However, there's no relevant expertise in the company to drive such an initiative. So AMTA team initiated a joint team with Mato, which is an ESG initiative, and also Simtech to help Flowline to conduct assessment in both technology needs and the skills gaps. Now, the technology solution and relevant training courses have been identified with strong buy-in of company's management. So Mato and AMTA are now guiding the company on the ground application for ESG support and creating courses with SG support via training providers. The second case study is with UTEC, LLE in the electronics sector. So UTEC is eager to upskill its workforce to facilitate its smart factory project implementation. However, the UTEC faced challenges in finding suitable training courses to address their smart factory transformation needs and the balanced workforce training and operation activities. By partnering with the JobKred, we help the UTEC to conduct a training need analysis to identify the skills and the competency gaps at both organizational level and the individual level, and set up a plan to develop on-job training framework for critical roles of the smart factory. The training need analysis outcome helped UTEC to identify priority training topics matching the company's smart factory transformation progress, and establish their company's workforce development roadmap and the role-based individual upskills plan. So now, a contextualized holistic training program by leveraging the strength of multiple I3Ls and the Simtech plus the on-job training have been curated to address the diverse training needs while minimizing the disruption to the business operation. So the training program will receive joint funding support from multiple agencies. So here you see SSG and the WSG to streamline the training implementation. So in short, AMTA here trying to help company to identify the right training topics and training courses to address your needs. So this training is no longer the traditional training. We want to conduct such training in a form of a project basis to solve your problems. Then the gaps can be bridged through such training programs. So to our training providers, so we're here to help bring in the demand to you and also recommend the right training courses to the company for their take-up. So I will stop here. So later we have a panel discussion. I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zeng, for the sharing. And now, please allow me to introduce our last speaker for the day, Mr. Gary Gan from JobKred. Gary is the co-founder and the CEO of JobKred, a AI-based workforce transformation platform to actually leverage AI and data science to help companies understand the evolving industry skills demand and help the people to actually understand how to close their skills gaps and get ready for the future of work. In today's sharing, Gary is going to talk to us about what are the challenges he sees in the companies and what are the recommendations he can give to the companies on leveraging AI and technology to make the workforce future ready. Gary, please.
Yes. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming down this morning for this chat about advanced manufacturing talent. So I want to cover a little bit about the challenge that a lot of companies we talk to face. I'm sure all of you have heard and been inspired by all the different sharing about skills, all the interesting skills they need to have for your company. But when we talk to a lot of companies we work with, they could be SMEs, a few hundred people. They could be MNCs, tens of thousands around the world. The question is, how do we get this done? Where do we start? Right? So some of the companies we talk to who are SMEs, they may not even have a HR L&D. Some of the MNCs we talk to, they may have L&D, they may have OD, they may have HRBP, but they don't know who is owning the skills data, who is in charge of this decision, right? So that's all the practical challenges that we see from companies who want to start on this journey. So I'll share a little bit about, of course, how you can do it yourself, but where we can help as well. So before I begin, I want to cover a little bit about us. So I'm the founder and CEO of JobKred. I'm Gary. So for us, where we started from is that we also did a lot of work similar to what Chelvin has been sharing in crawling labor market information. Right? But from there, we started to work with World Bank, ADB, for developing nations, consultancy around the developing nations like Sri Lanka, etc. After that, we moved to powering Singapore's national jobs portal called My Careers Future with WSG. And now, finally, we are in the space of helping enterprises, helping companies themselves with their jobs and skills development. So we've covered sectors like construction, oil and gas, manufacturing, higher education, etc. So today I'll cover more on the manufacturing side. Last year has been interesting for us. We've been getting a lot of recognition in industry, including awards like HR Vendor of the Year and recognized by Gartner as one of the companies from Singapore using AI in talent development. So very proud to be part of this group of people from Gartner. So I want to cover a little bit about the current landscape, right? And I'm sure you all heard a little bit about this from Chelvin and Dr. Zeng as well. There is a lot of challenges around disruption today, right? I'm sure you recognize the things that are happening to us. Ukraine, COVID, supply chain issues, right? Pandemic issues. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That is the challenge that all of us face as organizations, even me as a startup, right? How do we be agile enough to cover some of these challenges? Second, skills and worker shortages. I think Chelvin was mentioning the great resignation. Many companies are struggling to make sure that they can keep their people, or they're struggling to even hire people because there's not enough talent supply with that current skill set in the market. How do you hire? How do you retain? How do you develop? How do you deploy your people? Third, technology changes. And as we all seen, the rate of change of skills is going so fast today. Every single day, another skill. Every single job posting they see from your competitor, another skill that they're doing. How do you keep up with all these changes? So that is the continuous disruption that every company is facing today. So what Dr. Zeng mentioned just now, one of the key challenges that companies face, how do you build a business case for doing this work, right? All of us are management or HR people here. It could be something that your boss asks you, can you build a business case? Can you show the value of doing this, right? I won't cover the good stuff. I think that one, productivity gains and all that, a lot of people can talk about it. I want to cover risks, right? In this case, what happens if there's a continuous disruption to your company? There is strong operational and business risk. Number one, of course, your business risk in terms of you becoming obsolete, right? Your company could become losing market share. I won't name names of brand names, but you know how many companies have been disrupted and disappeared from the market, right? You have operational risks. So for example, some of your companies you work with, manufacturing, COVID hit, half of the people couldn't operate in the company anymore. The manufacturing facility had to shut down operations. That costs you money, right? How do you deploy? How do you make sure there's covering officers effectively? That's that's operational risk. Third, compliance risk. Again, what if you don't have the critical technology or critical skill sets necessary to do the work? You get audited, you cannot comply, right? So that's you have to shut down. So these are all the risks that you can build as a business case as well when you talk about Industry 4.0 transformation or talent development and why we should focus on it, right? So I won't cover this too much as well, but the failure to innovate, very clear. Blockbuster, GM went bankrupt, right? Because they couldn't catch up to all these changes. They are being replaced by Netflix and Tesla. You got the issue of pivoting, right? Hertz, also because of COVID, bankrupt, right? Forbes, showing that so many airlines become bankrupt. Are there ways that the company could have pivoted faster? For example, like Singapore Airlines created pop-up restaurants. There are now, car sharing firms using a mobile app. They can go and borrow or rent cars from. Are there faster ways to pivot? These are the challenges that are necessary to deal with. Of course, possible options are building future capabilities, like what we've all been talking about, building new skills, building new kind of technologies in your company. You can also focus on agility. How do we have people who can do more in different environments? How can they be more agile? In a certain situation, can they do more things? So for example, in Singapore, Passion is like a shoe company. Sorry for the formatting issues, but basically they were able to build up a very strong e-commerce division very quickly, and then majority of the sales can come from China now, for example. Very quickly they had that capability that they can take their retail staff, train them in e-commerce, and get them to do live streaming, right? That was amazing for them. Michelin was a manufacturing company that did a lot of work in terms of building new data capabilities so that they can pivot and be more agile. A lot of data collection so that they can make more strategic decisions. So these are some examples of how agility can empower your company to be more agile. So more Singapore examples from Singapore. So for example, Phoon Huat in the news talking about building and identifying skills, identifying the skills and building the skills required. So for other companies talking about getting the support of staff to show how it benefits them to support the plan. A lot of companies worry about change management, right? How do I get my company to buy in? How do I get my people to care about this whole initiative? These are certain things that we'll cover later on about how a system can help in situations like that. So how can you change this situation? I think there's two major recommendations, not just from myself, but also from Prof. Zeng and Chelvin that we shared. How do you increase the agility of your organization to be able to react quickly to any situation that happens? Right? Building cross-functional teams where you can deploy effectively with cross-functional skill sets. How do you do that operationally? That's one suggestion. Second is, of course, identify and build your new competencies and capabilities. All the skills that we've seen just now, how do you build that out? And second, how do you have a system to pivot or build new business lines rapidly? So these are some recommendations that we suggest to deal with this situation. Now, the next question is, where do we begin? Right? How do I get all of these things done? So of course, there are certain steps that you can think about in terms of how to get started. First of all, of course, thinking about your strategy of the company. Where do I start in terms of how does this apply to me? What are the skills that I need? What's my business strategy? Do I want to go local? Do I want to go regional, for example? Second, buy-in. How do you build a business case? How do you get buy-in from stakeholders? How do you get buy-in from your rank and file as well? Third, how do you then deploy and build your future-ready competencies or job profiles that align with your strategic initiatives from the board? Fourth, how do you then, as Chelvin mentioned first step, assess your people currently? Where am I today? Where are my people skills today? Right? What do I need to do? Maybe I don't need to do anything. Maybe I need to do a lot, right? And last one, track the skills of your staff, right? Take action to then either train your people, deploy your people, or track at least the skills of what's going on in your people. So that's where you can start to begin. So where we come in to help in terms of our system to use AI or to use skills intelligence, what we call skills intelligence in this whole conversation. So I want to cover a little bit about the right-hand side first. Traditional methods, right? So traditional methods of doing this whole business transformation initiative. This one you can do yourself, absolutely. So we know of companies who have used Excel to do all of this work, and I'll explain how they go about doing this. So first of all, knowing the skills and trends in your industry, right? Of course, Chelvin's division is doing a lot of work. They're sharing a lot of skills necessary, but which one applies to you, right? Somebody must sit down and do that research and getting all this data and applying it to my company. So that takes a little bit of time. Second, from there, getting buy-in. So it's not just one person making a decision for the whole company, right? You have to get buy-in, you have to talk to your BU heads, how this applies to every single division, all the way from engineers down to technicians, right? What are the skills that applies to me or the division? Thirdly, skills assessment, skills inventory. I can share how one company did it, right? So they did, first of all, the macro view of what skills are needed. Secondly, they put in into a competency framework and profile. Third, every single supervisor sit down with the staff one by one, open up an Excel, and record skills, right? So you can imagine how painful that was. There was so much resistance from the supervisors. I'm so busy, you asked me to do this. So much resistance from the staff. It's like, why am I doing this in the first place? It's just asking me to do more work. They couldn't see what's in it for them. But through that exercise, it can take 6 to 12 months to do this whole work, and it comes out as a massive Excel that then somebody must harmonize, right? Somebody must sit down and put it together. And finally, once all this is done, you finally have the future direction of the company. You know what sort of skills you have. How does that apply to each individual staff? Who's going to sit down and kind of do the analysis, calculate the gaps for everybody? So this process, you can do it. We know of companies that have spent 4 or 5 years doing this whole process. Excellent, right? But a lot of smaller companies, even larger companies with limited resources, it's a struggle to do this. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and 1 to 2 years, can you wait to be taking this time to do this process? Are you going to be relevant by that time, right? So where I'm going to share later on is how we come in to make a difference. So again, skills data, skills benchmarks, we have all of that in the system. Immediately, one click away, you can see all the different trending skills. You can refer to Singapore Skills Framework, Europe Framework, US Framework, all at your fingertips, right? Don't need to do desktop research. Second, all the data is in one system. So your BU heads, your C-suite can immediately see all the data, can make decisions, and immediately apply that throughout the company, right? Third, your staff can then do the work themselves to log in and do their skills verification. No need to sit down one by one so painfully in the Excel interview format and get all the data in. And finally, all the data is immediately harmonized, visualized, and your AI recommendations. I'll show you later what I mean by AI recommendations, but taking all the data and then applying it to each individual staff. What careers are suitable for me within the company? What sort of skills gaps do I have? What training should I take, right? That's empowering your supervisors and the staff to take control of their own career in the company. So that's what we are able to do with JobKred. So as I mentioned, we are working towards using a skills platform to automate your skills planning, talent agility, and capability development by automating your skills need planning, automating the skills fit matching, and also providing a scalable career and skills guidance. So I want to share a little bit about our work in the manufacturing side. So we've been working with AMTA as well to look at different job profiles and also specifically certain what we call lighthouse families, lighthouse companies that you want to kind of emulate and building this sort of skills database. So again, similar to Chelvin, everyone is sharing with you the future skills necessary, right? How do you apply it to your company? So that's where we come in again to look at all the external skills data. So you have that at your fingertips. We also help you to quantify and measure your internal skills data. That's equally important because what's outside may not apply to your company inside. The skills that they talk about outside may be a different name from the skills inside your company. So we help to support the internal skills data. With all that data, we support these areas of work using our system. Skills taxonomy. You will have your skills, language of skills at your fingertips. Change it anytime you want. A new skill comes out tomorrow, you get the information from the skills data, update your taxonomy immediately, right? Second, skills mapping and analytics at your fingertips again. One click, you'll see exactly who is doing what, what's the skills gaps, what are my strongest, weakest skills at your fingertips. Third, with all this data, how do you it automatically supports talent development, right? As I mentioned, your staff can log in and do their own career and skills development. Lastly, talent mobility and deployment, that's something new. A lot of companies are working towards internal mobility and talent marketplaces, where you can deploy people cross-functionally automatically. Post a job posting, we recommend the right person to do the work, right? So in this case, we are not replacing anyone. We are empowering your company, certain companies especially who don't even have HR to do this, right, with these capabilities using AI. Of course, we do integrate with HRMS systems. We also have already integrated with training providers out there, including My SkillsFuture. So those courses will immediately appear inside our system when there's a skills gap recommendation. And we also work with consultancies as well. So last few slides, basically covering the unique features of us. I found this. So basically, we have the flexible competencies. We can help you create a unique language of skills. Every company is different, right? Those skills that were detected by the market data outside, you may call it something different, or you may look at a certain different skill. You won't use AutoCAD, you use another sort of technology, right? It must be customized to you. How do you do that at scale? We can support that. Second, skills validation. So I want to share a little history example. So one company asked us, hey, I have all this CV data, right? Can you just scan the CV data, put into the system? Yeah, sure, we have technology to do that. We did that. But we realized that, hey, how come all the different data points don't show anyone working in your company currently? Because all the CVs are not outdated. No one updated the CV. I mean, you're in a company already, you won't tell your boss, I update my CV, right? So in the end, unfortunately, the data could be collected very quickly, but it's not really relevant to the company. So that's one example of where we support skills validation and assessment by building those competency models for your company, assessing the people in a self-assessment or supervisor assessment method, for example, right? And get this validated, proven, accurate skills data. Building skills dashboards, so you don't need to do data visualization. You don't need to hire a data analyst yourself. It's all there for you. And then finally, empowering your team to do the self-directed learning, self-directed career development. So end of the day, you get your agile, future-ready workforce that can respond rapidly. We are your single source of truth of skills, basically, in your company. Speed and automation. A lot of companies have started to expand overseas. We have companies who are a few hundred people, but they already have staff in 20 countries around the world. How do you do this sort of exercise, right, scalably? With language translation. So that's where we can help that out as well. Without the system, you can imagine how difficult it is. And finally, scalable, as I mentioned, across departments and countries. So last slide, I think really covering use cases. I won't talk about this too much, but essentially we have helped companies to identify what skills they need in a very, very quick manner. So within 1 month, we can do all the work to look at the future skills, come up with the competency frameworks, get it out into the system, right? Much faster than previously. Second, where their skills are today, getting all their skills assessments. So within, I think the example was UTech, for example, right, from Dr. Zeng. 100 engineers and technicians within 1 month. 1 month, we did all the analysis and got their skills gap, skills inventory and skills gap calculated out. So that was we were quite happy with that project, right? And then finally, that skills gap analysis, career pathways, all that is already in the system. So the whole goal of this project, generally, most companies look at it, is to improve your job readiness score, your skills readiness score. Can you measure whether your people are ready with Industry 4.0, right? What's your score? Can you see how that's improving over time, right? These sort of things we're able to support. And finally, of course, skills deployment, right? So doing things like deploying people, increasing productivity are all things that we support as well. Right, so in short, these are the things that we focus on. We build your skills taxonomy, your unique language of skills, so that you can design your unique job architecture. You can display, consolidate, and manage your skills across your organization. You can develop your workers, and then you can deploy your workers, all based on skills, with the underpinning value proposition of we have to show business outcomes also, right? What is the productivity gain? What is the cost savings? What is the worker agility, increased capabilities that we can measure for you to build your reporting and business case at your fingertips? Okay, so that's a quick sharing about our company, JobKred, what the situation is in terms of operationalizing the goal of workforce transformation, and how certain technologies like us can help you to accelerate that goal. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your insightful sharing, Gary. So now, I'm pretty sure the audiences have a lot of burning questions. You can now start posting these questions by scanning the QR code on top right corner of the screen. For our virtual attendees, you're also going to see a QR code on your screen to send in the questions. You can follow the instruction on the screen, and you can also upvote the questions you are interested in so that it can get priority in the Q&A section. Now, can I invite our three speakers on stage, please? Chelvin, Dr. Zeng, and Gary, please. Today, we have also specially invited a panelist from the industry to join our discussion. Let's also put our hands together to Ms. Lim Hee-jun from Watson Engineering. Ms. Lee is the Executive Director of Watson Engineering, a local SME to design and build and maintain high complexity aerospace tooling. Let's see what other questions we have received so far. Well, once again, thank you for our panelists for the insightful discussion, and let's further elaborate and reflect on the learnings today. Perhaps we can start with Hee-Ju. Hee-Ju, as an SME leader in the PE sector, which part of the sharing in our earlier sessions resonate the most with you? And can you also share how Watson's workforce journey has come along?
Sure. Hi, good morning. I think the part that resonates most with me is Dr. Zeng's sharing on the challenges and justification required by companies in adopting Industry 4.0. As a company, as a local SME, I think we have tried to be very forward-looking in adopting advanced technology since the 80s. You know, like when everybody was still using conventional machines, we started with CNC machines, and then we adopted ERP systems. When a lot of planning or production planning in high-mix, low-volume SMEs are still very manual. That is actually in line with the national narrative where Singapore tries to get ahead of our global competition by adopting newer, more advanced technology. But I soon come to realize that globally, even in the very niche sector of aerospace tooling, in my competition with Japanese, with American competitors, we soon lost that cost competitiveness. When most of them are still using very manual system, they have been able to keep their overhead lower. And those systems and technologies were working well in high-mix, low-volume contexts. So I became very mindful about reminding my peers in SMEs on how not to get overly excited about adopting Industry 4.0 technology when their workforce or the kind of industry they are in may not be ready for it. So that resonates with me the most.
Thank you very much, Hee-Ju. The second question I see from here is actually for Dr. Zeng. Actually, Dr. Zeng, your work with SIMTech and AMTA, can we hear your views on the Industry 4.0 skills versus some of the foundation skills in manufacturing? Are there any interesting observations from AMTA's industry engagement? In particular, how companies can find a balance between the emerging I4.0 skills and those that are more foundational, like machining, CNC programming, and also what we have learned today, the core skills. Well, it's a really long question.
There's a lot of things. So when we talk about the Industry 4.0, we're talking about the automation, right? We're talking about the control with the closed loop intelligence. So it's about data analytics. It's about the connectivity. It's about the integration. So it's an enabling skills and technology to move the company to a so-called smart factory or smart manufacturing. It's about how smart you are. While foundational skills we are talking about here is more the shop floor, the skills and the capabilities for making product. Right? This is ranging from the product design, the innovation, the processes, and the material engineering. So end of the day, to fabricate anything, you need the material processing capabilities such as the forming, the joining, welding, surface finishing. All these are still the base. Without this base, you cannot run your business. So this is for sure. And even inspection and the quality assurance, all this actually is essential to do any business. So there are training supplies, the observation, you're talking about observation. We visited now but close to 100 companies. Of course, all these companies are considered as the leading companies who have already implemented certain level of ability, Industry 4.0 abilities. And many training courses are on the Industry 4.0, which is hot. Actually, you look at the local actuals, and some of the areas in this automation, robotics, and the IoT, actually, we observe oversupply. Actually, all the different training providers actually are launching their courses. But this is more skills and knowledge, which is essential, not yet down to the specific level of company, addressing companies' needs. This is one of the observation. But looking at the other side, on the foundational skills, as Huey mentioned, very limited supplies. You can hardly find out that the training courses actually cross different sectors. And particularly from the local university, some of the areas in the precision engineering, the training topics are actually disappearing from the list of the syllabus. So this is what we observe. And personally, I believe this trend, this situation will continue. And on one hand, the manufacturing sector is moving towards smarter. There's a competition issue, there's a cost issue, there's many things. But on the other hand, the foundational skills is essential. Then you're talking about how to find the balance. And I guess I'm not the domain expert in this area, I have to admit. But a few things actually in my mind. Firstly, for our bosses, for the companies, we may have to change the mindset. The old way of doing things based on the foundational skills, yes, that is essential. And so we have the so-called your key people handling certain set of skills, which is essential. With the technologies advancement, what you call essential foundation skills may no longer be that essential, meaning certain skills actually could be handled by machines. It's going to be taken over by the machines. But there are skills which will not be able to be taken over or replaced by machines. That would be essential. Then looking at the job roles and the people assignment. So we know in the shop floors we have production engineers, or even down to the mechanical, electronic engineers, and each of these job roles handling certain of the skills. But moving towards the Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing, that may not necessarily has to be so. So why say so? Actually, we visited a number of companies, MNCs, example, HP. They are cross-training their production engineers with the data analytics skills. Actually, end of the day, the engineer can handle multiple functions across different departments, some more enhanced with the data or Industry 4.0 skills. So this is the trend. Not only one company, actually many other companies moving towards that. So once you move towards that way, you need to redesign your job roles. You need to redesign the compilation of the skill set. It's not only difficult to find the people in the foundational skills, you also have difficulty to find the people with the digital skills. So the right way or more effective way for SME is really to train your staff with the both ends. And the good thing is that our government agency is very generous. They provide funding support for you to do that. Beginning might be painful, but actually definitely will pay off. I know SSG now have this SCTP, which is the SkillsFuture Skills Transition Program, which provide a very generous funding support for staff in the company to be trained. And we know also have a CCP from WSG to provide salary even for the staff you are appointed to be trained across a new set of skills. Actually, I believe they pay up into 3 months salary and 70% or even 90%, which is very generous funding support. So of course, I know many companies actually have shortage of manpower. On one hand, you need to handle your operation activities, and very difficult to squeeze time to train them. I believe that is the issue can be addressed. So the balance actually, my belief actually rely on your key staff uplift the job roles. So right now, why difficult? To be honest, we talking to many fresh graduates. Going SME compared with MSc is not their first choice for many reasons. So if we can redefine the job roles, uplift job roles with the more advanced skill sets, and from the career progression, from the salary, income, whatever, that may change the situations. So I would strongly recommend going that way by leveraging on the resources government can provide and the trained staff to have the combination of both foundational and the industry 4.0 skills, which may not be so-called contradictory, but can be combined. But that's what I can share.
Thank you very much for the detailed sharing. And I think today one of the key points I learned is that on top of the I 4.0 related emerging skills and the foundational manufacturing skills, there is another inseparable component of the workforce for the future. That is the core skills. So I happen to have a question actually from the audience that I think is more with Hiju. So can you actually share with us your view on the critical core skills from a industrial panelist perspective? Especially if, do you have any examples of your technicians or engineers that can leverage of these skills to achieve better performances? For example, can they actually use the critical core skills to develop the right solutions or help the customers better? Yeah.
You're referring to the 5 critical core skills that Chelvin mentioned, right?
Yes, the critical skills, yes.
Okay. Yes, I would think those are essential skills, especially those that relates to application of the skills and developing a skill set that allows them to be able to connect the dots.
Sense making.
Yeah.
Sense making.
Yeah, sense making. Yeah, so but I would like to stress again about the practical hands-on skill that we would like to first develop in our engineering team, be they fresh grad or mid-career changers, that allows them to have that foundation before they go on to use these other critical core skills to upskill themselves and also to be able to provide stronger input to the whole process.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think then it leads to another question actually for Chelvin. So how can actually SSG help the companies develop both these critical core skills and also the foundation skills so that to strengthen the organizational resilience and make the workforce future ready?
Yeah, again, I think there are 2 parts to this, right? I mean, the skills supply is one part, the skills demand is one part, right? I agree, Hiju, that from the skills supply perspective, I think maybe in order to attract our future talent into the sector, we emphasize a lot on Industry 4.0 because this is where the sexy part is, right? But not to forget that to get a job done, you really do need some of these core manufacturing skills, right? It's part and parcel of the job, right? It's just that now you do a job a little bit differently because now you have the tools to enhance and support your work. So I think from a skill supply side, I think it's really how we can work with our training providers as well as our institutes of higher learning to see at the various levels, right? Whether is it technician level, is it at the manufacturing engineer level, whether is it at the, even your team leader level, what are some of these core manufacturing skills that you really need to have? Whether or not you're doing the job or you're guiding your team, you still need to have some of the skills, right? But so it's about intervening at the curriculum level to make sure that some of these skills are then not lost in the curriculum at the, and also from the on-the-job learning part of the training, you can emphasize, because it's hand skills, right? You really need to do the application part. So I think it's really at the skill supply side, how do we work with our institutes of higher learning, our training providers, to make sure that the curriculum is more complete. And curriculum is complete not just from the soft skills. Soft skills is extremely important because it's really how you deal with the changes at work, right? But it's this core application of your hand skills, plus what part of your 4.0 skills you need to layer on, what part of digital skills you need to layer on, and which part of it is important for that job role. Of course, the skills are transferable, but you can't be training one job to take 10 jobs. So it must be quite, I think, customized, right? So that's the skill supply side. On the skills demand side, I think there are certain sectors, I agree, where the emphasis on some of these hand skills are really, really quite important. You really cannot run away by machining without knowing the machining tools and being able to handle them. There are some sectors, like when we spoke to companies like Hope Technic, for example, they are into the automation space, right? They design robots, for example, and they work a lot with IHLs like Singapore Poly as well to bring the students in as part of their attachments, and you work on software, you work on products together, right? That part, I think, maybe that is because the value chain of the industry, it brings itself better to the application of this, and therefore we do see in companies like that, one of the key roles are really your automation engineers, your design engineers, the core part of their job role, right? And therefore it's a lot easier. I mean, it's quite intuitive, right? So the skills demand, we do see that it probably will it's a stage, right? You can't expect all sectors to suddenly chunk to where electronics adoption of I4.0 is. So I think from managing this is really about looking at managing this ecosystem, right? Where there's the different levels of skill supply coming out from the IHLs. And I'm not just referring to fresh talent, I'm referring to mid-careerist talent as well, as how we support mid-careers to move across sectors from one manufacturing sector to the other by leveraging on the adjacent skills that they can bring to the job, but at the same time enabling them to top up what is the missing gap. And at the same time making sure that, we have companies out there who's prepared to give these sort of semi-skilled trainees a chance, because you technically haven't gone into it because you are going to that new role, but you do have adjacent skills that come along with it. So how do you build an ecosystem that encourages this cross-sharing and building of skills collectively together, giving our workforce time to pick up some of these skills, giving them the opportunity to practice their skills, emphasizing the value of different skills. And it's not that it's only I4.0 that's important, it's enabler. It's an enabler, it's not the be-all and end-all. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much, Chelvin. And I have a keyword I've been upvoted most from the audiences. This keyword is change management. So I think change management is not just about the mindset, but the methodology we are applying to actually change the whole business model and organizational excellence. So how can companies start with change management towards I4.0? Can we get some insights from the panelists? Probably let's start with Dr. Zeng.
This is a very big topic. Change management cover many things. Probably, I just want to add a point based on what earlier Chelvin mentioned. For company, particularly SME, the knowledge and the skills retention is another key issue. People move around. Actually, then if the skill, particularly we're talking about the core foundational skills, actually if lost, actually the company will be forever facing big challenges. So one of the things that we see essential is making use of the intelligent tools, such as the AV or the VR or those kind of tools, actually not only for capturing the skills and the knowledge, but also use it for training. That's the first point. Secondly, actually, I mentioned about, you talk about change management, or I mentioned about the job redesign, the process redesign, those things. Right now, a lot of foundational works, the skill, that need the key is probably done by the technician or operators, whatever. I mentioned may not be necessary. Probably some of the work can be done by the machines. And our engineers actually, if they have the intelligent tools to help them, a lot of work could be done even by the engineers. My personal belief is that with the company moving up the maturity status of I4.0, company may need more engineers than technicians, particularly if you have the right tools to address the issues, even including the high mix, low volume things. If your system is flexible enough to do the adjustment, to handle different type of job easily, so this kind of things actually would be done by the engineers instead of technicians. Some more. Chelvin mentioned a lot about the core critical skills. Talk about the innovation, talk about the other things. Actually, that is more probably for the engineers that can handle the higher level of things. And So that's what I'm thinking of. If the low-level technician type of job can be done in a smart way, and which could be part of the job scope, even for the engineers. That's what I believe. So just to add on that point.
Does Xiaowin or Gary want to add on some to Dr. Zeng's comments?
It's very interesting because I was just talking to a friend of mine from Johnson Controls, right? Moving the company from industrial company to automation, very technology-led firm in the built environment space. So he said it really boiled down to one question really. It's about understanding, helping your staff understand the why behind the transformation. Why is it important to transform, right? Really, if they cannot see the why, nothing will happen, right? So it was very interesting because he gave me an example about, because in a company that's as big as Johnson Controls, right, it's really, they have a huge team of digital natives, which is the fresh talent is really good at technology, right? They write the apps, they design the software, etc. But at the same time, because it's a building automation company, they have a team, very senior and experienced specialist who's very good in building the solutions, understanding, you know, which part of the facility needs to be handled, looked into, the aircon, for example, HVAC systems, for example, right? So it's really about, as you drive the company towards, you cannot stay still because the environment is changing, so the company needs to change. How do you help each of them to understand the why they need to change, and change to what, right? So it was quite interesting because then it's really about simple conversations like, for example, an aircon technician coming in, do you really, is the job just about looking to the aircon, for example, when you come in today, to make sure that everybody feels comfortable? Or if I can give you a tool that tells you at the start of the day when you come in, right, certain data points that tells you what is the optimal comfort level that your people walking in will feel most comfortable in. What is the temperature, for example? And if I can help you to track how many people are walking in so that you can make adjustments to it earlier, then you don't need to downstream tweak the problem with the system later on, right? Then actually, now you are empowered to not just look at your team of aircon technicians, you can actually monitor that across different buildings. Then your job role has enhanced, right? So when you start to help them to see the why behind the skills transformation, they were a lot more open. They see that, hey, actually it does make sense. And then that's where the conversation between the digital natives and the domain experts start to see a middle ground. Because then the digital natives can then take their software and say, let's see how I can help you do that. Yeah, so I think the skills, the change management is really down to this, whether we can help our staff or ourselves or organizations see the why to it, and which part of the why we need to answer. I think the question I asked about why is probably different from my colleague, it's probably different from another company. Yeah.
Anything to add on, Gary?
Yeah, so I just want to add on to Chelvin's point also about see the why, right? Change management, the main issue, and we do a lot of change management work, is it's so hard to get change happening, right? Not just building the business case, getting your staff to be on board, but also making the process easy and fast to do that change. These are all the challenges. So I want to share an actual case study of a client, right? Where all these things come to a head, including the critical core skills thing. So we have one client, his main problem actually is not about future stuff, you know. His problem is like, hey, a lot of people complaining, customers complaining about our service level, our product quality, right? Wow, you know, all this headache that he had as CEO. So he wanted to find out what's going on, what's the problem here. So we're actually going to do a skills gap analysis for them to find out that actually it is critical core skills. It's actually foundational problem. So basically their service and support staff have a lot of communication issues. Critical core skill, right? So it's not talking about I.4.0 or something like that. It's just that I don't even have this critical core skill done properly. So at least we managed to help them to understand what was the problem. Second, how do you get buy-in from the staff, right? So had to go down and actually use our system and do change management, talk to the supervisors to educate the staff that by doing this change, you can keep your job and get promotion because this communication skill set is useful for these other job roles also, right? That getting buy-in, what's needed for me to care about this topic, right? Why should I go and do training, right? That helps them to understand, oh, actually it leads to a career gain, it leads to a personal growth. That was important as well. Last one, resistance to change, very common. Again, Even before talking to the supervisors, others like, why am I doing this exercise? I'm really busy every day doing my day-to-day work. I still need to jaga my people, have conversation with them. So we went in, have to show them that there is a tool and makes it so everything is just one click, interface is there, have a conversation, 5 minutes, you're done, right? It's not that the thing is 5 minutes and there's no value, but the fact that you use technology in this case to make it really easy to change and get things happening. So for me, I feel that, and I resonated very clearly with the fact that a lot of change needs to look at first the foundational, right? Foundational skill sets as a manufacturing company, foundational skill sets as a worker, communication skills, where my gaps are. Maybe you're great, you're all good already, then you can go to the next step, right? Or maybe it's time to do an audit, have a look at where you are today, realistic kind of research, and then do that change first, take it step by step, right? So that's kind of where I see change management. You have to look at showing the value. Either you're solving a pain in a company or building something new. Have to show the value to the individual worker as well. What's in it for me? To get them to buy it and finally make the whole process easy. Less friction so that you're saying that it takes 5 minutes at a time only. That's easier.
Thank you very much, Gary. Actually, there is another question for you, so you can leave your mic on. So this question is a little more technical. How can actually companies identify which are the skills relevant to them, especially if they do not really have a L&D team, the learning and development team, because a lot of SMEs may have only just 1 or 2 personnel in HR. Do you have any tips that can be shared?
And this is not an easy answer to give, right? Because it involves so many things. First of all, as I mentioned, what is the world out there like? Second, how does that apply to me as a company? So this is definitely a C-suite or at least business unit head conversation, right? Because it involves this sort of high-level decision making. Should we focus on just the foundational work? Should we focus on future skills? So in that sense, how companies can get started, as I mentioned, is start with where you are today. Have a look at what's going on in your company first, or identify a problem area. Let's say you have some department that's having issues, right? Or you're having a certain initiative that you want to start off with. Start with that approach, right? Look at that set of people first, that set of competencies, that set of job profiles, and then from there, explore options. It may not be us. It may be some other manual method you can do it, but use that to build a case of how you can make a change happen. In this case, whether you fix the problem with the department or you build new capabilities, right? And use that to continue going throughout your whole company to expand the scope, right? Either solve more problems or build more capabilities. So in that sense, I think the hardest step is the first step, as always, right? How do you get the first step going first? Have that top-down build the case, value building in a sense. Have to get buy-in, 100%, right? Get buy-in from your management. From there, build the operational capabilities to look at your people or look at the skills gap. Then identify what action to do, and hopefully if you have enough time, you can rectify that gap, and then that is a complete case that you can then replicate more and more.
Thank you very much, Gary. I think due to time constraints, we have opportunity for one last question, and I think this also resonates with the most of us today, is how we can kickstart the workforce upskilling. And do you have any best practice or some reflection or tips from our panelists? Let's go one round. Hopefully we can have 1 minute for each of the panelists today.
Here, right? Okay. So actually, I was from SMTA. All along, actually, we are very much promoting practical training. So training is not about the classroom training. You have to starting from a business case from the company. Without understanding a very specific need from company, training may not serve the purpose, particularly for the SMEs. So that's what I want to add. So now, been heading AMTA, we're promoting this model. We call the learn, practice, implement, plus a pre and a post effort. So pre-training meaning that the team need to engage the company to understand the real business gaps and what the objective company want to achieve, who should be sitting in the training. So it's not only so-called sending me people, I'll train you, whatever, but whether it serves the purposes. This need to be analyzed before we even define what topics put inside to train your company. That's the pre-effort. Now moving to the actual training, we could learn. The learn is about the topics relevant to your end goals. It's not about the from A to Z. So we don't believe that type of training. Of course, now we're talking about practice. Practice is to apply the skills you learn by using your company data. So this is very important. If you cannot link the skills, the topics with your company's workplace data, it's very difficult for you to relate to. So implement, of course, that is a commitment from company bosses to put it as a project initiative to actually get it done. So some of our training courses conducted from Simtel earlier, the end goal is for the team to present to the boss of the company to make sure the end goal met. So that is the tip to say this, whether this course is completed or not yet completed. So we very much advocate this type of model. Actually, you mentioned about the practice. This is the right practices. And so now we're talking about the come to AMTA. So we help company to understand your net goal, to come out with we call the contextualized training courses. This is what we meant by contextualized training courses. Yeah.
Any comments from Xiaowin and Iju or Gary?
I just want to add that there are, of course, I think, I mean, we've got bosses sitting here, right? Of course, it would be best if companies see this need and start on the process, right, and the journey, right, and bring different parts of, sort of cater the conversation to different parts of the organization. But there will be situations, and we see that a lot, where companies don't see the need to, but then what do the workforce do? Do you just wait, right? And you and me, I mean, mid-careerists, our skills cycle is also, I mean, because things are moving so fast, right? The currency of our skills are also going down. So then how do we take the opportunity to make the decision for ourselves, right? What if a company is not interested, then how do I even start the journey, right? And it's your own skills development journey, it's our own, right? So I think for SSG, what we're trying to do is to equip enterprises to take action. We're also trying to equip our citizens to take action, right? So what we do after this is really to look at the different pillars that I mentioned about, what are the priority skills under Industry 4.0 pillar, the green pillar, green economy, or et cetera, right? And then for individuals, even if your company doesn't want to invest because they don't see the relevance to your work, I think as individuals, we should still invest in these skills because they're adjacent, they can help you make the next career change. And skills to us is, you can't build skills with that easily, you know. You need time to invest in yourself. You need time to help yourself to learn and unlearn and relearn. And I will encourage organizations to give the space to employees to learn about that, because we think the skills development journey is the most effective when there's a conducive organizational environment. But in the event where it's not ideal world, then we will try and equip some of this information for our citizens to take action. So the skills report that we launched last year was the first that we tried to do, looking across sectors, looking at priority skills across different pillars. November this year, we'll publish the next one, and then we'll talk about Industry 4.0 as one of the pillars. We will also have a chapter looking at mid-careerists, specifically on skills that can help our mid-careerists pivot. Yeah.
Thank you, Xiaowin.
Yeah, so for us, back to the 5 critical core skills that Xiaowin mentioned, we also see that as an important skill set development for our technical workforce, in addition to the technical skills. So what we did to get our people excited about this continuous learning journey is to adopt, or rather to work with SimTech, to get our whole team trained in Lean. So because there is now a tool using Lean, so that promotes more communication, and you know, engineers and technicians are not exactly the most communicative people, and sometimes their messages get lost in translation. But with a common tool such as Lean, we were able to garner our people to get motivated to learn, to discuss, to work together on projects. So I think that's something that we have experienced, and we would like to encourage our peers to do that too. The other thing I want to add is about mid-career changers who may have attended training on advanced manufacturing, on robotic welding. So I did a little experiment. I recruited someone who went through Simtech's robotic welding and another mid-career changer, both in their late 40s, who came from a non-technical background but was interested to become an apprentice for machining. The gentleman who went through advanced manufacturing training, of course, although he's passionate about learning welding, he also has aspirations about getting us to adopt robotic welding when we have definitely evaluated that way before we recruited him. But because of our very high mix, essentially no volume kind of work, it was not a viable adoption. So he got disillusioned because he didn't have the foundational welding skills. He went straight into advanced manufacturing or robotic welding. So he can't quite continue in that role. Whereas the other gentleman who started with no preconception, who understands that foundational machining skills need time to develop, he's still here. And he's still developing his foundational skills. So this is something that I'm a bit mindful about, having trainees who are trusted right into advanced manufacturing without foundational skill set yet.
So I think change management also applies to us. We also find it very difficult to do extra work, right? So I think to get started on the journey, maybe find your biggest problem first, or your biggest fear, right? It could be something like, let's say you have workers who are older and they're going to retire, and then there's no replacement coming in because it's an unsexy industry, for example. It could be, I'm worried that I cannot retain my staff. I'm worried that I'll get replaced, whatever it is, right? Start with that kind of pain, because that creates motivation to action, right? And then from there, think about like what possibilities we can do in terms of skills or capability building, or in terms of analyzing what are the gaps, or in terms of like just bringing someone in to have a look at the situation, right? So that creates your drive, your building the business case, essentially. Business case is there's a problem to solve. That's your first step. And after that, of course, there's AMTA, there's SSG, there's ourselves that can come in to support you to investigate on what's going on there. More likely than not, it's something related to your people or your skills. More likely than not, yeah, which can be solved through the mechanism from government, from experience from other SMEs, and from AMTA as well. So I think that's my suggestion. Start with a problem or start with fear.
Thank you very much to our panelists. I still have questions streaming in, but due to time constraints, we are not able to take them, in this session. But please rest assured that we are going to address all your questions later, after the session, through email sharing to all our attendees from both the virtual and physical sessions. And with that, I would like to invite everyone to complete a short survey on this session before we come to a close. And this is really insightful session, and time really flies, actually, with such engaging and insightful discussions. So the survey we are seeing on this screen will be strictly confidential, and they will really help improve the experience of your future engagements. In the meanwhile, it's a gentle reminder of that all today's sharing will be recorded and posted on the YouTube channel of SSG, SkillsFuture portal, as well as AMTA and SSG's LinkedIn page. With that, again, my name is Huey, and with my colleagues Sammy from AMTA, Nora and Matthew from SSG, and Kaylin from JTC. We really appreciate your participation today, and we hope to see you soon. Just a reminder that a quick lunch will be served on the pantry on your left side. And if you have any additional questions or discussion you want to bring up, please feel free to address to my colleagues and the panelists here. You can also make use of the breakout rooms on the right for further discussions. With that, thank you very much, and stay safe.